Hey guys, my name is Alec, here today with a special guest, my good friend Alun Harries. He's going to do some playing for us and talk about the music industry. Stay tuned.
Hi, my name's Alun Harries. I'm a drummer from London, originally from Wales, and I've been playing for 45 years. And I played with various artists from the British jazz scene to the West End. I've done West End shows, I've done pop gigs, I've done rock gigs, I've done drum and bass gigs. My first love in music is probably jazz, and I want to play more jazz. And yeah, I kind of love what I'm doing, very blessed to be doing what I'm doing after all this time, and yeah. I grew up in Wales, and then I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston. I could only afford 8 months or so, and that's probably one of my regrets. I wish I'd finished my degree there. That would have been good. So I was turned on to Pat Metheny. I love Pat Metheny, all the compositions, the musicality, the players. I love Herbie Hancock. I love Chick Corea. And you know, I've been lucky enough to grow up and be around when these guys were probably at their best and producing the best compositions, along with using the best players in my time. You know, so I kind of, if that's the style that you might describe as modern jazz, I love modern jazz. I still love pop songs and playing simply because that's how I've made my living. Made my living by playing with singer-songwriters.
Right.
That's the thing. And I'm still working with a singer-songwriter who just happens to be my wife, Lisa Cray. So I've done a couple of albums with her, and we're out there doing bits and pieces, and she's out there doing bits and pieces, which is good. But if I was to be tied down, I'd love to do Pat Metheny's gig. You know, that would be awesome. It'd be a privilege to play with Herbie Hancock. Equally, I'd love to play James Taylor's gig, or Sting's gig, or Joni Mitchell's gig. Well, unfortunately for you young guys, the model's changed. When I moved to London in '86.
Yeah.
Didn't know anybody, right? So my story went, I met a couple of guys. There was a couple of Welsh guys up there who sort of pointed me in various directions, and I ended up doing a thing called NYJO, the National Youth Jazz Orchestra. So through that orchestra, I met a load of other musicians. And to be honest, my whole career was based on, you'd play one gig, you'd meet 4 people or more, depending on the size of the band, and then if you did a good job, somebody might turn around to you and say, would you come and do this gig? And then it was, in other words, it's word of mouth. It's all word of mouth. So there was no social media. If I'd had an iPhone back 30 years ago, I would now be very famous. But I've forgotten half of the gigs I've done. Well, probably more than half the gigs I've done. So it was that word of mouth thing, basically. I ended up playing 6 nights a week in London and doing pubs, eventually I did West End shows. As I said, rock gigs, pop gigs, jazz gigs, whatever, and you just meet people, and if those people liked you and what you did as a player, they might call you to do another gig where you'd meet another circle of people, and then the circle grew, and that's how all those gigs happened.
Nice.
You know, so that's basically, that model is much more difficult in 2019. Well, everybody's got a home computer and everybody's got a home studio in their house. So even from the point of view of having done sessions in CTS in Wembley and a load of other places in town, all of which escaped me, a lot of those studios have closed down. Mark Angelo was one studio, actually. I met Mark the other day. A lot of these studios have closed down because basically budgets have crumbled. People can't, like yourself, Alec Rees, amazing bloke, can do incredible things in their home studios that do not require an orchestra. You know, you can get an orchestra now out of a Mac if you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that's the fundamental change in the studio musician's life. The actual sessions have got less and less. The budgets have crumbled, and people can do amazing things in their home studios,
Right.
especially if they're musical. You know, and it's just the whole thing has changed from live musicians playing and reading music in a studio to somebody in this is not a bad thing. It's a shame because then other people don't get a chance to play with orchestras in, you know, I did 2 albums with the Welsh Symphony Orchestra in Cardiff.
Nice.
So in Llandaff in the studio, you know, I walked in there, didn't know anybody's 120 people in this orchestra.
Yeah.
And they stick the music up in front of you and they press record. That's it, you know.
Wow.
So I used to love that and thrive on that. I loved that kind of thing. So that's kind of, there's a few guys doing it, but not many.
Yeah.
You know, those kind of days have gone. So where it's going now, I suppose, is down the route of social media and people doing online sessions. In other words, you can be in your studio
Yeah.
and you can record for some producer in Los Angeles or Hong Kong or New York, whatever, you know,
Yeah.
which is great for the guys. And youngsters, you must learn to use technology, Pro Tools, Logic, cameras, video editing. I cannot do this stuff. So that's held me back. You've got to diversify as a musician these days to be able to make it in this industry, because this industry is the hardest it's ever been. For me, oh my God, that's even more scary for me than it is for you, because I'm older than you. But oh my God, that's a hard question to answer. If we come from a drum point of view, there are a number of drummers on this planet who do produce great sounds and interesting ideas using hybrid kits, you know, acoustic kits and electronic, so amalgamated together.
Yeah.
And those guys are being called.
Yes.
So again, it's back to diversification. You have to diversify. Whatever, in this game, you have to diversify. You need to learn how to work computers and all the rest of it. As regards to music, I don't know where that's going to go, because I can see, if you just talk about the pop industry,
Yeah.
it's gone down the singer-songwriter thing in the last sort of 20 years, a la Ed Sheeran doing Glastonbury on his own,
Yeah.
you know, with loop pedals. Now, I thought he did a great job,
Yeah.
but to watch it, it's a little bit boring.
Yeah.
I think he's great, don't get me wrong. I got turned on to music by watching people, and you know, you'd have a drummer, a bass player, a guitarist, a sax player, singer, and all that kind of stuff. So to answer that question, where's it going? I can't tell you how it's going to go, because in the last couple of years, if I was teaching a music history class, right, and in 100 years we looked back at the history of pop music, I think that you could probably define the golden era of pop music from 1955 to around about halfway through the 90s. Now, a lot of people might not like that, but the pop songs from Elvis in 1955, right, developed through the Beatles in the 60s, to Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin in the 70s, and then you had all the, you know, the pop hair bands, which I was in the 80s, like Duran Duran and all the rest of it. And then by the 90s, after the punk kind of revolution, it started to change. And I think Joni Mitchell had a great quote the other day, I read it. Record companies were more interested in moulding artists than developing them. So in other words, they take them down the route of being, you know, just a singer-songwriter, but the record companies would provide the songwriters, the recording studios, the engineers, the producers, and the singer would just be a visible entity.
Yeah.
And that kind of diluted the content of Western music, pop music especially. And I think it's gone down that route where there's so many artists, and social media, you know, anybody can be an artist if they've got a GoPro. and a microphone, and it's just diluted the standard, in my opinion, of the actual musical content and quality of songs.
Yes.
You know, when you say a 3-chord trick, people will only learn 3 chords now.
Yeah.
As a teacher, I'm a drum teacher as well. So as a teacher, my classic sort of fun question is, if you say to a 15-year-old, what would you like to be when you grow up? The stock answer is, I'd like to be famous. So the second question is, what do you do? And the normal answer is, I don't do anything, I just want to be famous. So Western culture's completely changed to this thing. Everybody wants to be famous, Love Island and all this kind of lot, which I've never seen. And it's a matter of, it's really distracted from people wanting to learn things.
Yes. Yeah.
But having said that, I have seen youngsters picking up instruments and wanting to play the instruments. So, I mean, that's hard in schools now. So you have to find a good private teacher, which costs more money, and it's hard for parents and all the rest of it. But there are youngsters still interested in learning instruments, which actually gives me hope.
Yeah. I think it's good. I mean, I have some students myself. I've noticed over the last 10 years the difference in their attention span, and it's simply because when I was growing up, I didn't have a mobile phone until I was like 16 years old. But now you see 3-year-olds with iPads. So
we bought one yesterday for my 10-month-old baby, because she's constantly grabbing our phones and doing that with them. So we bought a little iPhone model yesterday with some sounds in it, and she's 10 months.
It's crazy.
It's nuts. Well, they perceive technology as normal.
Yes.
There's kids, as you just said, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old with iPhones and iPads. And, God bless them all, they can make them work.
Yeah.
But that goes down the route of they're exposed to the internet and whatever's on the internet, so the world. Then they might not choose to learn something. And then that question of, I want to be famous, because they just want to see themselves on an iPhone or Facebook or Instagram or whatever, that detracts from the content of their learning, and that does worry me a little bit. But there are kids out there who will not want an iPhone. They want a trombone or a trumpet or a drum kit or something, and thank God for that.
I think consistency and being unique in what you're doing. But that is difficult these days, because everyone is...
There's distractions.
Yeah, there's distractions, and I mean, people are coming up with the craziest ideas all the time, so...
Well, everybody wants to be famous.
Yeah.
But nobody wants to do anything.
Nobody wants to work at it.
Yeah, no, they don't. They don't want to put the time in it. I mean, my stock answer is kind of, sounds a bit glib, but start at the top and work down.
Yeah.
Try and focus in on what you're really good at and work at it, and you will succeed.
Nice.
Might take a while, but you will succeed. I'm a guy who comes from a council house in a small town in Wales with no musicians or musical influences in my family, who has been and made a living as a musician in London for the last 33 years. I'm nowhere near being a millionaire, but I love doing this.
Yeah.
And I'm really privileged to be supported by some amazing companies. They've all been really kind to me. I will name them. Pearl Drums, Zildjian Cymbals, Regal Tip, Sticks, Protection Racket, Cases. Oh man, that was a good question. So when I was 15, I was in school, and my mates decided, they ended up getting guitars for Christmas, and I don't know how this happened, but they wanted to form a pop band, and I said, I'll be the drummer. Still to this day, I have no musicians in my family, so I haven't a clue why. I was doing clarinet in school, which I hated, but it taught me to read music, which is good. I decided to become a drummer. My mum and dad bought me a little Del Rey kit, which was just a kick and a tom and a cymbal and a snare, so no hi-hat, And I took to it because I could read treble clef. I could read music straight away, so the drum music was easier because it's just in straight line. And then I graduated. I went to a drum shop in Swansea, and the kit that was available for a reasonable price in those days was a Pearl Maxwin. So that was my first real drum kit, Pearl Maxwin, and I used that for about 5 years. I've used every kit. You know, I was a Yamaha endorser for 12 years and blah blah blah. But I came back to Pearl when they contacted me, and I spoke to them, and they offered me a deal. And for youngsters, it's especially really important to realise that you shouldn't be chasing equipment for nothing. You should only play the equipment that you were willing to buy. I bought loads of Pearl kits, and it's a matter of these people. The music industry is very small. The musical instrument manufacturers circle is really small, much smaller. And they just knew I wasn't bullshitting them, and I wasn't just after free gear. So, you know, I bought Pearl kits, and then I was offered a Pearl deal in 2000, and I've been with them ever since. I must admit, I do love the product, because even with yourself, Alec Reese, you know, we've just thrown these things up here this morning. You stuck mics in them. I've tweaked 1 or 2 toms.
Yes.
And we're off.
Well, I noticed, you know, as soon as I was setting gain levels and doing some test recording, that kit just sounded phenomenal, straight off.
They are amazing. I love them. Everything about them, the build quality, and this kit's 10 years old.
Nice.
Right? It's, the build quality is second to none. And again, being the studio musician, not so much anymore, but you know, it was important back in the day to save time, because time was money. So you needed equipment that went up quickly and sounded good,
straight on.
and then you'd leave. That was it, you know. So that's all. I trained myself the way Steve. I read an article in Modern Drummer in 1977 with Steve Gadd, and it was basically you get in there, you deliver what they want you to do, and you leave. That's what my job was, and that's what I wanted to do. It's changed now, but
yeah.
So you didn't want to be, you know, messing around with like trying to tune a tom or a snare drum for 3 hours, because basically you'd be replaced.
Yeah.
So you had to be, you know, on the ball, quick, do your job and get it. So this equipment just works.
Yeah.
And this equipment has come together over the years that, you know, as I said, I used to play Yamaha, I played DW, Arbiter drums I had at one point, you know, Tama drums. This stuff just makes my life easy. The cymbals, I've gone in the last couple of years. I've luckily been a Zildjian endorser for 35 years. I wish I had these cymbals, you know, so 35 years. And they basically, there's lots of stick definition in them. They're very musical cymbals, but they're not loud. So I can, with my hearing there's a problem. So I can hear what I'm doing on these cymbals, and they're not going shh, and I can't tell what's going on. You know? So the cymbals, Zildjian, Cage, Special Drives, they're awesome. The sticks, again, that's a massive thing for youngsters especially, to try and find your perfect stick. I looked for years and years, tried everything, you know, every single make you can imagine.
Yeah.
And a good friend of mine who worked in London, he was an endorser with Regal Tip. And I tried some of his 7As, which were a little bit light, but I did use them for about a year. They were great. But sometimes you have to play a loud gig and they struggle a little bit. So I settled on the 9As, and I've been with those guys for 20 odd years now, I think.
Nice.
You know, and I use the same stick for everything. Nice. Whether it be a quiet jazz gig to a lumping rock gig, you know.
Awesome.
So yeah, they're great. I've got to mention Protection Racket, because Dino at Protection Racket down in Cornwall has always looked after me. I was one of their first endorsers. They're just great. And again, the bags, they're based on a surf design. You know, they've got the inserts with the woolly inserts and all the rest of it. Cat likes them. And so again, they just keep the drum safe and sound and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've actually started working a little bit with Roland. I've got an SPDX. I need to spend more time on that actually when I get a chance. But yeah, I'm very, very blessed. So the point is, play the gear you buy. Nice. Because everybody knows everybody. Yeah, we were just talking about the UK drum show coming up in Manchester, which we both need to get to. these people appreciate it. If they're endorsing you, they appreciate it that you're putting their product out there.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
it's so just kind of weird one. Start at the top, work down, and stick to it.
Yeah.
So whatever equipment you find that you like, buy it, and then you might want to approach the actual manufacturers, and they'll welcome you on board. Right, okay, so back in the day, it was all word of mouth. So it was doing hundreds of gigs, meeting people on gigs who might have their own recording studios or might have an artist that they're working with, and if they like what you did, that's how I got into recording sessions. I did try to contact people, again, but through word of mouth. And one guy I did a load of sessions for, Phil Pope, he did all the music for Spitting Image.
Nice.
He actually, a bit of a story, this is when mobile phones came out, so I'll tell you how long ago it was. He tried to contact, he was recommended two drummers, myself and this other guy. I didn't have a mobile phone. This other guy had a mobile phone, and he got the gig for like 10 years. When this other guy left to go to Australia, he called me, and I ended up doing his for a while. It was just kind of cool,
Awesome.
So again, word of mouth. Play as many gigs as possible, play with as many people as possible, and you might just be lucky to meet somebody who's got his own studio who would ask you to come and do some recording. As regards getting recording sessions, I think it's really good if you can get your head around using technology, Pro Tools and Logic, and then learning about microphones, which is really important, and then you could develop your own little studio in your home. Where you can put a kit up and you can mic it up and you can start to record, and then you can record for your friends, and if you get good at all of the various aspects of the recording process, you can then start touting yourself on social media that you can do your own recording, and then as you build your network and your reputation, I'm sure other online sessions might come your way.
Nice.
Nice. I think as an added thing, I mean, a lot of guys don't do this anymore. I think personally that learning to read music will open many doors for every musician, but especially drummers, because if somebody can put a piece of paper in front of you and you can play with a click, which is like without saying, and you can read what's on that piece of paper, that opens up even more doors.
Nice.
So I think that's important. A lot of guys don't do that anymore. They learn songs. So it's doing everything and anything you can to be where you want to be. That's a great question, because I think, so when did I realise I wanted to be a musician? Well, it was kind of a weird one. I used to work, when I left school at 17, and I got a job in the local water authority as a trainee draftsman. Now I stayed there for 7 years, and I did an ONC in civil engineering and a HNC in civil engineering. In the meantime, I was playing in bands in and around my area, and I still wanted to be a musician. Now, the next bit is the hard bit, right? So I in Great Britain, there's only one place to be, and that's London. That comes with all the pitfalls, like the expense of living there, the size of the place, the amount of people. One person told me it takes 8 years to get into London because there's so many people you have to meet, So I made a decision late, actually. I left my job and my girlfriend and my home at 24, and I flew to Berkeley. And I was there for 8 months, as I told you earlier, and I just was going there to see if I was good enough to go to London. I did really, really well in 8 months. That convinced me that I was good enough, and I came back home, and then I moved to London, and I didn't know anybody. So I was basically starting from scratch, not knowing anybody in London. So I think there's a certain amount of bravery that's needed. There's a certain amount of drive. I've probably discovered in my life that I'm probably OCD from the point of view you have to have this drive to get to wherever you want to be.
Yeah.
Which, again, another saying I give all my students, start at the top and work down. There's only 4 music capitals on the planet. There's London, New York, Los Angeles, and Nashville. They'd all require, unless you're lucky enough to be born in one of those cities, to move to them. So you've got to have this bravery or madness, that's one way of looking at it, to want to go to a music capital, because that's where you're going to be exposed to the most musicians and the most opportunities of trying to make your way forward. It's hard though, you know, but again, my success is down to word of mouth and hours of practice and hours of focus. There's been times where I've been struggling my arse off as a you know, not making a living as a musician, so I had to do, when I moved to London, I still had to get a day job for the first 2 years as a freelance draftsman. One thing that would make life easier, if you went to a college if you're from the UK, go to a college like the Royal Academy or Trinity or Guildhall in London. It's down to networking, yeah. You know, of course you'll have time to practice, you know, money will buy you the possibility, but it's the networking of the people you're in the classroom with, who in 10 years' time after you finish your degree might own a studio, might own a production company, might own a promotions company, might be looking for a drummer for a band, and they've just got a European tour, and we're going to call it, oh yeah, what about Alan, you know, he was in the class with us, you know, he's pretty good. That kind of thing, really. So yeah, networking is it, you know, because obviously social media, it's cold calling. Nobody knows you until you build relationships, you know. So social media is good though, because, you know, I started putting what I call tidbits up on my social media, and believe me when I say this, I only did it because I'm getting on a bit, and I did it so that my daughter can see what her daddy used to do. So I didn't do it as any promotion, I just did it to see if I could just, you know, off an iPhone, the kit, play, record a snippet, stick it up. I was documenting what I can do at this second, but in 10 years' time I might not be able to do. I mean, we were chatting earlier, and I think every gig now is this horrible phrase, is take it or leave it.
Yeah.
You know, and I hate that phrase, but it's what it is, you know, and it's been the same through my whole life, you know. There's always been 20 guys behind me and you who will do it for less, but I used to say to my students in the college in Guildford, don't work for nothing, because eventually everything will be for nothing, and you will devalue the possibilities of earning a living as a musician.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have to diversify even more just to survive and put food on the table.
Yeah.
So, value what you do and stick to your guns. You know, remember that little saying, start at the top and work down. Keep starting at the top. And then people eventually will realise that you produce quality, you're reliable, you're on time, you're talented. You, Alec Reese, can do the whole home recording thing. I can't do that, you know, the logic side of it and all the rest of it. So you will make yourself more valuable to potential employers, and that's what the world has become like that now.